The bloodied and battered body of Captain Logan Adams hung limply in the grip of the towering Tok Commander Yaksa. The alien's claws dug into his flesh, sending searing bolts of agony through his broken body. Adams's vision wavered, darkness threatening to overtake him, but he clung to consciousness with every fiber of his being. He couldn't give in, not now, not when the fate of humanity itself hung in the balance. Mere hours ago, Adams and his strike team had infiltrated the heart of the Tok dreadnought, fighting through waves of ruthless alien soldiers to plant a devastating payload of explosives at the ship's core. It was a desperate mission, a last-ditch effort to strike a crippling blow against the oppressive Galactic Tok Empire. But just as victory seemed within reach, disaster struck. An overwhelming force of Tok warriors stormed their position, forcing Adams to make the ultimate sacrifice. He ordered his team to retreat, to escape the doomed dreadnought and carry out their true mission, while he stayed behind to hold the line. In a fierce firefight, Adams fought with the fury of a cornered beast, taking down scores of the enemy before the sheer numbers overwhelmed him. Now as he was dragged through the halls of the Tok flagship, his battered body screaming in protest, Adams steeled himself for what lay ahead. He knew the sadistic reputation of the Tok interrogators, the cruel and twisted methods they employed to break the minds and bodies of their captives. But Adams had a secret weapon, one the Tok could never suspect. Before the mission, Earth's rebel leaders had implanted advanced nanotechnology within Adams' body, microscopic machines that would allow him to gather vital intelligence and sabotage key systems from within the very heart of the enemy stronghold. As he was thrown into an impenetrable detention block, Adams began to put his plan into motion, the fate of humanity resting squarely on his bruised and bloodied shoulders. In the bowels of the Tok detention block, Captain Logan Adams gritted his teeth against the searing pain that racked his battered body. Dr. Zorak, the Empire's most sadistic interrogator, loomed over him, his reptilian eyes glinting with malevolent glee. The mind-probing device clamped around Adams's skull hummed with power, sending waves of excruciating agony coursing through his brain. "Your resistance is futile, human," Zorak hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "You will break, and you will reveal your secrets to the glory of the Tok Empire." Adams focused his mind, drawing on his extensive training to erect mental barriers against the invasive probe. Even as his body convulsed in pain, he clung to a single, defiant thought. The nanotechnology hidden within his cells, slowly infiltrating the enemy's systems like an invisible army. Through the haze of agony, Adams sensed the nanotech's progress, a subtle shift in the vibrations of the ship around him. Power fluctuations rippled through the walls, and the mind probe's hum wavered, its connection faltering. Zorak snarled in frustration, adjusting the device with a vicious twist. "What trickery is this?" the interrogator demanded, his claws digging into Adams' flesh. Adams forced a strained smile, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "Wouldn't you like to know?" Zorak's eyes narrowed to slits. "You will tell me, human. You will tell me everything." As the interrogation intensified, Adams retreated deep within his mind, focusing on a carefully crafted lie. He let snippets of false information slip through his mental defenses, hints of a secret human weapon that could turn the tide of the war. Zorak's eyes widened with each revelation, a mixture of intrigue and alarm flickering across his reptilian features. Light years away on the bridge of the Prometheus, Admiral Garrett Blackwell stared at the holographic display, his brow furrowed in concentration. The coded transmission from Adams's nanotech pulsed on the screen, a gold mine of intelligence on the Tok-Tak's defenses and fleet movements. "This is it," Blackwell murmured, his voice thick with tension. "The key to ending this war." He turned to his bridge crew, commitment etched into every line of his weathered face. "Prepare the fleet for attack. We move on the Tok flagship at once." As the human fleet readied itself for the decisive battle, Adams clung to consciousness in his cell, his body broken, but his spirit unbroken. The nanotechnology continued its silent war, sabotaging critical systems and sowing chaos throughout the enemy ship. Beside him, Zack, the young Tok-Tok guard, who had grown disillusioned with his empire's cruelty, watched the human with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "What have you done?" Zack whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant sound of alarms. Adams met the guard's gaze, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "What I had to," he replied, his words permeated with steadfast perseverance. "For the sake of us all." As the Tok-Tok ship descended into chaos around them, Adams and Zack prepared to make their move, knowing that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. The war had reached its tipping point, and the actions of one battered human captive and his unlikely ally would determine the course of history itself. The Tok-Tok flagship shuddered, alarms blaring through its corridors as Adams and Zack raced toward the hangar bay. Sparks rained from ruptured power conduits, evidence of the nanotech's relentless sabotage. "Left!" Zack hissed, yanking Adams behind a bulkhead as a squad of panicked Tok-Tok soldiers thundered past. Adams winced, his battered body protesting every movement. "How much farther?" "2 more levels," Zack replied, his reptilian eyes darting nervously. "But security will be heavy." They pressed on, the ship's violent tremors growing more intense. Through viewports, Adams glimpsed flashes of weapons fire. The Earth fleet had arrived. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out behind them. "Stop right there, human filth!" Dr. Zorak stood at the far end of the corridor, flanked by heavily armed guards. His eyes blazed with fury as he raised a wicked-looking energy weapon. "Go!" Zack shouted, shoving Adams toward a nearby maintenance hatch. "I'll hold them off!" Before Adams could protest, Zack opened fire. The narrow passageway erupted in a storm of energy bolts and acrid smoke. Adams dove through the hatch, the agonized cry of his ally cutting through the chaos. Heart-pounding, Adams navigated the cramped maintenance tunnels, emerging into the cavernous hangar bay. Amid the frenzied activity of Tok-Tok pilots scrambling to their fighters, he spotted an unattended shuttle. As Adams sprinted for the craft, a stray energy bolt seared past his head. He threw himself into the pilot's seat, fingers flying over unfamiliar controls. The shuttle's engines roared to life just as security forces swarmed into the bay. The small craft lurched forward, clipping other vessels as it careened toward the magnetic containment field. Adams gritted his teeth, ramming the throttle to maximum. With a bone-jarring impact, the shuttle burst through the weakened field and into open space. The scene that greeted him was one of breathtaking destruction and deadly beauty. Massive Earth warships traded devastating salvos with Tok-Tok vessels, their advanced weapons carving through enemy shields like paper. Swarms of smaller craft danced between the Titans, locked in their own furious battle. Adams marveled at the sight of the neural-linked fighters, their movements fluid and precise beyond anything he'd ever witnessed. They wove impossible patterns through waves of AI drones, leaving trails of destruction in their wake. A warning klaxon jolted Adams back to his immediate surroundings. 3 Tok-Tok fighters had broken off to intercept him. He yanked the controls, sending the shuttle into a wild evasive pattern. "This is Captain Logan Adams to any Earth vessels," he broadcast on an open frequency, requesting immediate assistance. For several heart-stopping moments, there was no response. Then a cocky voice crackled through the comm. "Hang tight, Captain. The cavalry's coming." A trio of neural-linked fighters screamed past Adams's shuttle, engaging the pursuers with lethal efficiency. Within seconds, the Tok-Tok craft were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. "Lieutenant Commander Jace Hansen," the pilot introduced himself. "Pleasure to meet you, sir. Admiral Blackwell's been expecting you. Follow us in." Relief flooded through Adams as he guided the battered shuttle toward the imposing bulk of the Prometheus. As they neared the flagship, a massive explosion lit up space behind them. Adams turned to see a Tok-Tok dreadnought split apart, venting atmosphere and bodies into the void. The shuttle touched down in the Prometheus hangar bay with a teeth-rattling thud. As the hatch hissed open, Adams stumbled out, his legs threatening to give way beneath him. A medical team rushed forward, but he waved them off. "No time," he growled. "I need to see Admiral Blackwell, now!" Minutes later, Adams burst onto the bridge, his bloodied and battered appearance drawing startled looks from the crew. Admiral Blackwell turned from the holographic battle display, his eyes widening at the sight of the man before him. "Captain Adams," Blackwell said, a hint of awe in his voice, "what you've accomplished, it's nothing short of miraculous." Adams shook his head. "No time for that, sir. I have critical intelligence on the TOC-TAC defenses and fleet movements. And there's more. The nanotech is still active in their systems. We can use it to cripple their entire command structure." Blackwell's expression hardened with tenacity. "Then let's put it to use, Captain. It's time we end this war." As Adams began relaying the vital information, explosions continued to blossom in the space around them. The battle raged on, but for the first time in years, the scent of victory was in the air. The bridge of the Prometheus erupted in a cacophony of cheers as the last TOC-TAC dreadnought imploded, its fusion core breached by a well-placed volley from Earth's neural-linked fighters. Admiral Blackwell raised a hand, silencing the jubilant crew. "This battle is won, but the war isn't over," he said, his voice cutting through the sudden quiet. "Captain Adams, your intelligence has given us an unprecedented opportunity. We're taking the fight to the TOC-TOC homeworld." Adams nodded, his face a mask of unshakable focus, despite the exhaustion etched into every line. "What's the plan, sir?" Blackwell activated the holographic display, revealing a detailed map of the TOC-TOC capital. "A two-pronged assault. Our main fleet will launch a feint attack on the outer defenses, drawing their forces away from the Imperial Palace. Meanwhile, you'll lead an elite strike team to infiltrate the complex and capture Emperor Zorgax himself." Lieutenant Commander Jace Hansen stepped forward, his cocky grin replaced by a look of fierce intensity. "I'll be providing air support with my squadron, sir. We'll clear a path for the ground team." As Blackwell outlined the details of the operation, Adams studied the faces of his newly assembled strike team. Tech Sergeant Bryce Collins, a grizzled veteran with a cybernetic eye, nodded at him. "Don't worry, Captain. I'll have their security systems dancing to our tune." Hours later, Adams gripped the handrail of the stealth shuttle as it plummeted through the TOC-TOC atmosphere. Anti-aircraft fire erupted around them, filling the sky with deadly energy bolts. Hansen's voice crackled over the comm. "Incoming bogies at 3 o'clock. Engaging now." The shuttle rocked as neural-linked fighters screamed past, their weapons tearing through the TOC-TOC interceptors. Adams turned to his team. "Remember, our primary objective is the Emperor. We go in fast and hard. Collins, you're up." The shuttle touched down in a cloud of debris, its stealth field flickering and dying. As the ramp lowered, Collins' fingers flew over his hollow interface. "Security grid is down in sectors 7 through 12. Move!" Adams led the charge, his team fanning out behind him. They encountered sporadic resistance, TOC-TOC soldiers caught off guard by the sudden assault. Energy weapons flashed, the acrid smell of ozone filling the air as both sides exchanged fire. They fought their way deeper into the labyrinthine complex, Collins disabling security checkpoints and sealed bulkheads with surgical precision. "The Emperor's bunker should be just ahead," he called out, his voice tight with concentration. As they rounded the final corner, Adams skidded to a halt. A phalanx of heavily armored warriors stood before a massive blast door, their weapons trained on the human intruders. "The Black Guard," Adams breathed, recognizing the elite TOC-TOC soldiers from intelligence briefings. The air itself seemed to ignite as both sides opened fire simultaneously. Adams dove for cover, the searing heat of energy bolts singeing his armor. He watched in horror as two of his team fell, their bodies smoking from direct hits. "Hansen," he shouted into his comm, "we need air support now." The ceiling above them exploded, raining chunks of metal and stone. Hansen's fighter screamed through the opening, its weapons blazing. The Black Guards scattered, their formation broken by the unexpected assault from above. Adams seized the moment, leading the charge toward the blast door. Collins sprinted to the control panel, his fingers a blur as he worked to override the locking mechanism. "Almost got it! There!" The massive door groaned open, revealing a cavernous chamber beyond. As Adams stepped through, his blood ran cold. A dozen monstrous figures loomed before him, their bodies twisted and bulging with unnatural muscle. Beside him, Collins swore. Gene-forged super soldiers. This wasn't in the intel. The battle that followed was a nightmare of flashing energy weapons, screams of pain, and the sickening crunch of augmented bone. Adams watched helplessly as his team was slowly whittled down, their weapons barely slowing the relentless advance of the Tok-Tok abominations. Suddenly, a wave of pure force slammed into Adams, sending him flying across the chamber. He struggled to his feet, his vision swimming, and found himself face to face with Emperor Zorgax. The Tok-Tok ruler's eyes glowed with malevolent energy, tendrils of psionic power writhing around him like living smoke. "You dare invade my sanctum?" Zorgax hissed, his voice reverberating in Adams's skull. Another blast of psionic energy sent Adams tumbling, his armor cracking under the strain. He scrambled for cover, desperate to regroup with what remained of his team. As he dove behind a fallen pillar, a familiar voice caught his attention. "This way, human!" Adams turned to see Zack, the Tok-Tok guard who had aided his escape, gesturing frantically toward a hidden passage. With no other options, Adams signaled to his surviving teammates and made a break for it. They raced through twisting corridors, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. Zack led them deeper into the complex, his knowledge of the palace layout proving invaluable. Suddenly, the complex shook violently, nearly throwing them off their feet. "What was that?" Adams demanded. Zack's eyes widened in shock. "It can't be General Krang's forces. He's making his move against the Emperor." As they rounded a corner, they found themselves in the midst of a three-way battle. Zorgax's Praetorians clashed with both Krang's rebels and the remaining human soldiers. Adams watched in disbelief as Tok-Tok turned on Tok-Tok, the power struggle tearing apart the very heart of their empire. "We need to get out of here," Adams shouted over the din of battle. "This whole place is coming down around us." But as they turned to retreat, a wall of psionic energy materialized before them. Emperor Zorgax stepped through, his eyes blazing with fury. "You have brought ruin to my empire," he snarled, "and now you will pay the price." Adams raised his weapon, knowing it would be of little use against the Emperor's awesome power. As Zorgax's psionic assault battered against them, Adams frantically searched for a way out, acutely aware that the fate of humanity hung in the balance of this final, desperate confrontation. Adams braced himself for the Emperor's crushing psionic assault, his muscles tensing as he prepared for the end. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the chamber, sending shards of debris raining down. Through the smoke and chaos, a familiar voice rang out. "For the true Tok-Tok Empire!" General Krang's forces poured into the room, energy weapons blazing. Emperor Zorgax whirled, his concentration broken. The psionic barrier flickered and died, giving Adams and his team a chance to scramble for cover. "This way!" Zack hissed, gesturing toward a hidden alcove. As they huddled in the shadows, the chamber erupted into a three-way melee. Zorgax's Praetorians clashed with Krang's rebels and the remaining human soldiers, the air thick with energy bolts and the screams of the dying. Adams' comm crackled to life. "Captain, this is Admiral Blackwell. We've secured the outer defenses. What's your status?" "Sir, we've got Zorgax cornered, but the situation's foobar," Adams replied, ducking as a stray bolt seared past his head. "General Krang's forces have launched a coup. The whole damn empire's tearing itself apart." "Understood. Hold your position. We're sending in reinforcements." The battle raged on, neither side gaining the upper hand. Adams watched in disbelief as Tok-Tok turned on Tok-Tok, years of pent-up resentment and political intrigue exploding into violence. Suddenly, a wall of psionic force swept through the chamber, flinging combatants aside like ragdolls. Emperor Zorgax emerged from the chaos, his eyes glowing with terrifying power. "Enough!" he roared, his voice resonating through Adams's skull. "I will not allow my empire to fall to traitors and barbarians." With a gesture, Zorgax lifted General Krang into the air, the rebel leader clawing at his throat as an invisible force crushed his windpipe. Krang's soldiers hesitated, their weapons wavering. Adams saw his chance. He signaled to his remaining team members, and they launched a coordinated assault. Energy bolts peppered Zorgax's position, forcing the Emperor to divide his attention. In that moment of distraction, Zack made his move. The Tok-Tok guard who had aided Adam's escape now charged at his former Emperor, a vibroblade glinting in his hand. Zorgax's eyes widened in shock as the blade plunged into his side. His psionic grip faltered, and General Krang fell to the ground, gasping for air. The chamber fell silent, all eyes fixed on the wounded Emperor. Zorgax stumbled, dark ichor oozing from his wound. He fixed Adams with a baleful glare, his voice a pained whisper. "You have no idea what you've done, human. The forces you've unleashed." Before Adams could respond, a squad of Earth Marines burst into the room, their weapons trained on the Tok-Tok. "Captain Adams," the squad leader called out, "we're here to extract you and secure the Emperor." As the Marines moved to take Zorgax into custody, Adams turned to Zack. The Tok-Tok's expression was unreadable, a mix of relief and apprehension. "What happens now?" Zack asked, his voice barely audible above the din of the ongoing battle outside. Adams shook his head, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. "I don't know, but whatever comes next, it's going to change everything." Hours later, aboard the Prometheus, Adams stood before Admiral Blackwell on the bridge. The holographic displays showed the Tok-Tok homeworld, pockets of fighting still visible on the surface. "You've done it, Captain," Blackwell said, a hint of awe in his voice. "Emperor Zorgax is in custody, and the Tok-Tok Empire is in disarray. But our work is far from finished." Adams nodded, his body aching from the brutal fight. "Sir, what about General Krang? He's consolidating power as we speak." Blackwell's expression hardened. "We're monitoring the situation closely. For now, we're preparing to withdraw the bulk of our forces, leaving only a token garrison to oversee the transition." As if on cue, alarms blared across the bridge. A junior officer called out, "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. General Krang's forces are mobilizing." Adams exchanged a grim look with Blackwell. The hard-won victory was already slipping through their fingers. "All hands to battle stations," Blackwell ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "It seems General Krang isn't content to let us leave so easily." As the crew scrambled to their positions, Adams stared at the holographic display, watching as new clusters of Tok-Tok ships rose from the planet's surface. The battle for the Tok-Tok homeworld was nowhere near the end, and humanity's greatest challenge was just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.